Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
Bit Podsmash.
Where Gaming Goes to Grab a Beer.
We're your hosts, Penguin and Termite. I'm Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right, and tonight we are doing part 2 of our New Year's episode because we weren't actually able to do all that we normally do on the New Year's episode that dropped
last week?
On the 2nd, last week, yep. It's that date for us right now, so I'm like,
It is
time.
today, yeah.
Time travel in my brain. But yeah, no, so we're doing that episode, part 2, where we talk about the podcast itself. We also have an announcement. We'll get to that here in a second. But first, we are where gaming goes to grab a beer. So what are you not drinking
So Termite drank a lot over the last year and is actually doing the very cliche dry January that in previous years I would have been like, man, maybe a week or two, but a full month is a lot and unnecessary. But no, I'm actually going to try it. I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Cliches are cliches for a reason.
They are, I guess.
They work.
But so maybe we're going to find out.
I mean,
we're back.
What is your goal, right? You don't even have to have a goal. It's just, hey, I think I'm going to take a break for a month, and that's good.
You know what my main motivation is just sleep quality. That's really it. I'm tired of being tired.
Oh, yeah.
It's sleep quality. I
have that thing where I have a drink. It's like roll the dice. I don't know if it's because I'm 30 or what, but roll the dice, right? If I have a drink after a certain time of night, just one drink, one of three things is going to happen. One, it's going to have little effect on me at all. Two, I should say four things. Two, I'll feel okay, feel good, enough time to sober up. Depends on what I'm doing, right, too, in part, and depends on what I drank. But oftentimes on the podcast, like, I'll be feeling good for the podcast, feel good a little bit after the podcast, and then be fine before bed. Three, it has any of those other two effects, but also my sleep is crap, just because any amount of alcohol in my system when I go to bed means that I'm not going to sleep well. Or four, I get the worst headache. I have not found any common denominator that predicts the headache. It's just sometimes it feels like, boom, headache. I think it has to do with if I already have a headache, maybe, like, or even a small one, the alcohol just, like, blows it up. But, man, it's like migraine level headache sometimes right before bed.
Yeah.
And I don't get migraines. Like, I'm not a person who suffers from that, but it feels awful. So, anyways, those are my four.
So I'm drinking water.
You're drinking water, right?
So I can sleep well. And last night was awesome. I slept the night. Yeah, last night I didn't drink anything, and I got great sleep. I have a watch that tracks my sleep quality, so it has like how much time you spent REM, deep sleep, light sleep, and it's a train wreck. Like, it's a garbage truck on fire if I'm drinking. And I definitely, there's like statistically known across the nation that around the holidays, like, all drinking is just a big uptick. Like, everyone's drinking more. And so, like, you can see the trend in my sleep graph. Like, gives you a number of like a sleep score based on a bunch of metrics, and it just tanked from like Thanksgiving to now. It's bad. So, and I feel it. Like, I feel gross and like heavy and just slow and sluggish. So I'm tired of being tired of being irritable. I was like, you know what? Dry January sounds great. There was a couple of holiday events too where I overdid it, and like the next day I was just like, oh my gosh, why? I'm 36 years old, I got 2 kids, like, this is just not okay. It's not cool. It's just not, it's not acceptable. And it used to be the lifeguards would be like, I gotta drive and I have to go places, but me being where I am now, all of my like community socializing is all done walking distance on neighbors' porches, and I don't work, so I don't drive. And that combined with the pandemic's over and I love socializing, and drinking and socializing is kind of what I do. So just we're going to pause all that for a month, but here I am with water.
I will tell you what you can look forward to, because I just discovered this.
Ooh,
it
lay it on me.
This is just a pint glass. I don't know why I showed it to you, but I'll give some context. My wife and I used to drink a lot of, when we first got married, we used to get Fireball whiskey and like Bold Rock or Angry Orchard ciders, and then we would do cinnamon apple mixes. And I actually intended to do that because when I got my wife for a stocking stuffer, I found 10 mini bottles of Fireball for like $10.
Yep.
incredible deal. And I've actually seen it everywhere now, but I was at the dollar store getting stocking stuffers for the kids, and I saw that, and I was like, ooh, I need to get some for my wife anyway. So I was like, perfect. I was already planning to get some ciders, so I was like, perfect, we can like relive that. So I actually intended to have that for tonight, but then we drank all the rest of the ciders over the course of the last 2 weeks. So I was like, well, what else could I do with Fireball? Because I still wanted to do that. And so I looked up what I had, and I had some Fat Tires. I was like, I had another one of those white stouts, right? The White Dragon or whatever. And I wanted to save that for a special occasion for end of my upcoming campaign. And then the last thing I had one more left hand nitro milk stout. I looked it up. I was like, that doesn't sound bad, right? Stout plus Fireball, but let's look it up. So I looked it up, and lo and behold, people rave about any stout
and Fireball
mixed with Fireball. And I was like, okay, all right, this could be just one of those things the internet is, the internet about, or maybe they're onto something. And I can say now, as of my taste before we started, just to make sure, it's good. It's quite good. So I think it would probably work well. I actually would probably do this with Guinness, because I don't really typically care greatly for Guinness, like as is. Like, it's okay. It's better than nothing. But adding a thing like a shot of Fireball to it, I think that would be fantastic. So Fireball plus a stout. In this case, left hand's milk stout. Fantastic. Very sweet.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cigar City apparently has an imperial stout aged in cinnamon whiskey barrels. So there you go.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, it's great. It's a great I mean, cinnamon, cinnamon pairs well with all the flavors that stouts are already great at, right? Like the roasty, dark. I love cinnamon. I'm a cinnamon fan. So get yourself some. All right, cool. Well, that is beer. So why don't we go ahead and start with the big news, the big announcement of our show here.
All right.
For the night. So we are going to end season 1 of 80-Bit Podsmash. We are calling the last 200 some episodes season 1. If you have a problem with a long season like that, then I draw your attention to any number of shows that go on for 200 episodes weekly. The one that comes to mind is Critical Role does that. But we want to freshen things up. We want to try to do a kind of a fresh start with the show, revamp possibly like a lot of different aspects of the show. I'm going through a potential job, or I am going through a job change this year. So I can't really get super into details because I'm not entirely sure what legally I can get into. So I'll just leave it at that. I will probably be going through a job change. So with that change of responsibilities and stuff, I'm a little bit unsure as to whether or not I'll be able to dedicate the amount of time to editing the show that I have been able to for the last 5 years. So it's a combination of that, and we'd already talked about potentially doing a refresh of our content and figuring out if we wanted to change things up, do something different with the show. And so, yeah, we're gonna launch a season 2 of the show, and we're going to spend some time to try to figure out what exactly we want to change, and just give ourselves a little bit of a break there for a creative break, so that we aren't just spinning the wheels on the show. And we figured tonight, with the just talking about the last year, kind of do a big zoom out and talk about the last 5 years too now. But we figured this is a great time to sort of put a button on what the show has been so far, and also announce that we're gonna kind of do some more going forward.
Yeah.
So do you want to add to all that?
Sure. Like, the context of our 5 years was 3 years of in-person every week on our table, doing the microphone thing, cheering with an actual clink, tink, and the pandemic hit. Now we're separated. We're doing the remote thing, which we've been doing ever since. But then I moved away.
Been fine. It's been great. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all worked.
Any less enjoyable.
Great.
Yeah.
Right. It's been awesome for us. But, 5 years is a long time to go for creating the same kind of episodes and the same structures. And of course, burnout's going to set in, and it looks and feels stale. It's been a while. With all of that happening in the context of being remote, and now we have 2 children and like full-time jobs. It was already enough of a lift. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. And it was already a lift to like get an episode made, edited, published, and out there as it was. But then because some content creators will be like, well, we're going to relaunch our content. We're going to relaunch everything at this date. But on the side, we're going to plan for, execute, and do it, set it up, stand it up so that there's no loss in content.
Right.
That's impossible for us because we don't even have the bandwidth to do the show as it is. I mean, we do. Right. I mean, we've done it, right? But like to add the planning, execution of a whole new thing and continue our current show to do a seamless transition is impossible. So that's another reason for like wanting to take the actual creative break, is so that we can not do this every week and hopefully come up with something better
and
a little more different.
Had we like revenue and a Patreon set up and something where people were like, like one way or another we were getting money or people were counting on us to release content, then we might have made an effort to do that. But we're doing this on our free time. This is just something that we do for creative satisfaction. So we figure that we're not like gonna, I mean, we may lose listeners and if you depart from us, no hard feelings, of course, right? But we're hoping that we come back with something better that you guys will want to listen to even more. But we figured, it's not like we were necessarily like going to be losing revenue or that advertisers were going to be losing like our show for a period of time. So we figured, this is a good time to just sort of like take a few months off and just kind of come back at it. So we are shooting for Q2 of 2023. We don't have an exact date yet. We're going to need to kind of figure some things out, check in, and of course discuss what our ambitions will be, how high and lofty those ambitions we've had high ambitions in the past and just not been able to sort of deliver on them, so to speak. We tried new shows and stuff like that, but we're kind of treating this as no sacred cows, except for that we'll probably be talking about video games still, right? Like we may change the frequency in which we do episodes, maybe do bigger, longer episodes twice a month or once a month instead of every week. We may get rid of the family friendly thing. We might tackle like, we might do it as seasonal content and tackle like one big kind of topic in sections each season, as opposed to doing a different topic every week. We may dig into like do a deeper dive into something we've already done before. There's no sacred cows here. Our content might change, our frequency might change, I won't say our quality.
Right. No, our quality should go up, I mean,
like
hope.
Other aspects of the show might change, like the lack of family friendly or stuff like that. But we're still probably gonna be talking about video games one way or another. And I would say still keep an eye out for content in the interim, because we're probably not going to be able to help ourselves if like a big announcement drops. We're going to want to get on and talk about it. So look out for bonus mid-season episodes, we'll call them, as well. And the shows, we're not breaking up, right? Like I want to make it clear that we'll be back and content will continue. We're just going to take a little, I think we've earned in 5 years of never, ever missing a Sunday night or Monday morning drop.
Yeah.
I think that we've earned a little break. What do you guys think? I don't know. But we are definitely interested in feedback from you guys. If you are a longtime listener, if you're a brand new listener, what have you loved about the show? What do you want to hear more of? What do you think we've done well? And, if you could, I don't know, have a say in the, this is your opportunity you've been listening and presumably enjoying, or just like hate listening to us for the last 5 years. What would you change about the show? What do you think our strengths are? This is your chance to kind of help shape the future of our show. So reach out all the main ways. So Termite, where can they reach out if they have feedback to give? Don't worry, this isn't the end of the show. We still got more stuff to do.
Oh yeah, we have a whole topic to talk about tonight. Well, the cool part is none of our names are going to change, and social media channels, those are all going to stay the same. So if you're already liked, subscribed, following along on Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Discord, the website 80bitpodsmash.com is not going anywhere. We're still keeping it. The link tree that's there, all of the links to all of our socials and our podcast feeds are all going to stay the same. We might kick up a second RSS feed, but we'll give our audience all of the details of that when that happens. But the original stuff that we've kept and continued to keep, we'll keep for 5 more years. For 5 years, we will in the future, indefinitely. So keep an eye on that. Like now is the important time to go click the follow and subscribe buttons, because you don't know when we're going to come out with a new piece of content, and you want to be made known when we will. So YouTube, Twitch, and we have our RSS feed, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, all of that. So hit us up. And now your feedback is more important than ever, because you can shape the future of 80-bit Podsmash and what we look like and what we do.
Wow.
It's crucial.
Who could say that? Who could say they've contributed? Well, I guess plenty of people.
Yes.
Whatever. It's fine.
Yep.
let's just yeah. So we'll again, stay tuned for more details because more details will be coming. I think that we don't have a lot of details yet because it's a pretty new thing. We took kind of this is after post holidays for us, but we recorded stuff before the holidays. So this is after our already 2-week break, and we had some time to kind of think and ruminate on it. But 2 weeks is not enough to have a full blown plan or anything. Of course, we just started discussing it a couple days ago, all things considered. So we'll have more details to come, and if you pay attention to all that stuff, you'll find out. Plus, I'm still probably going to keep doing DLCs on TikTok, right? Like I just kicked that back up with this week's DLC last week's DLC, so you can go check that out.
Nice.
From the link tree and all that stuff. But I'll probably keep doing all that stuff for fun over the course of it may not be every week. I can't promise every week, but I can promise that there will be TikTok content. So yeah, cool. Awesome.
Hello, Termite here. You just heard of our plan to take a little hiatus, a little break for a while, but I'm inserting this here into our show to let you all know, to make you all aware, that Termite is going to kick off a solo show. It's going to be about 45 minutes to an hour long every single week. I'm going to bring to you a few tidbits from the corner of Termite's brain. And I think it's going to be called Termite's Corner, but I don't really know because, I got to play with the name a little bit. So I'm going to go with that for now. But here's what's going to happen. So every single week, I'm going to come out with an episode that's going to break down into 3 big segments. So I'm going to kick off every show, every discussion with my trophy list, what I'm currently playing, what I'm excited about, basically like my current gaming habits. And I'm going to follow that up with a second segment of the news and all the news that has come out over the week, things that I'm excited about. So it won't be everything, but it'll be the things that I personally think matter and the things that I want to talk about or feel like have significance on the gaming industry or in my own personal gaming habits and what I think the audience might like to hear. Followed by a third segment of some retro games or some retro console discussions. Think of this as more of a spiritual successor to our Soul and console discussions. Basically, I have this huge gaming library that I've amassed over 30 years of gaming with my brother T-Bone, and we have a huge library here, and I like to dabble into some retro gaming in addition to the keeping up with the modern stuff. And so with that, I want to have those 3 segments, what I'm playing, the news, and some retro discussions. Please, your feedback is the most important. I can change and tweak the show as I go, and this should come out every single week on Mondays as well. The goal is to never leave the audience hanging. And why would you guys care about what I have to say about these things? That I have no idea. So I just humbly ask that you continue listening. It'll drop on the same RSS feed as 80-Bit Podsmash. Nothing will change on your end with your current subscriptions. And just want to make it known that Termite's Corner is going to kick off a week from Monday when this show airs. So around the 16th, I believe, will be the first episode. So stay tuned. And as always, you can find us over at 80bitpodsmash.com. Now back to the show.
All right. Well, then I guess we could do favorite things real quick. Do you want to do favorite things?
Yes, we can do that. Sure.
Well, then, taking breaks for our mental health and passionate creativity, while also still like promising more interesting content in the future is our favorite thing. But
80-Bit Podsmash is our favorite thing.
80-Bit Podsmash is our favorite thing.
Favorite things.
What's your favorite thing?
Segment of our show where we talk about something we dig, something we like that happened to us over the week, because it's New Year's on the mind, over the last week that you can follow along, be inspired by, go find it for yourself, but just something that could be simple or deep. For me, it was my New Year's Eve party. When I say mine,
I contributed. I was super impressed about you on this one.
Thank you. I contributed to. So I'm on the event. There's a team of people in this community. There's 19 units and like 20 some families, and we have teams and circles is what we call them. And I'm part of the events circle, which means I'm involved in all the discussions of all of the events that we do all year long. And with the holidays, there was a bunch of Christmas ones, and then there was a New Year's Eve party. And I took the lead on that one. So I was like, here's what we're doing. And we have a common house area that's like no one lives in, but it's a big house that like people can use for things. So there's a kind of open spaces and such. So that's why I say it's my New Year's party, but I probably shouldn't call it that, because there was other people that were helping, especially the decorations, which shout out to, if you ever listen to the show, person who decorated. But anyway, I got a bunch of snacks and food together, planned it all out. I actually ran a survey, and the survey was to solicit things that people want to say about their neighbors that are kind and nice or encouraging. And I put all of that together in like a slideshow with a history of our year and all of the work that all of the circles have done. So like structures and all of the maintenance and building repairs and like landscaping, all the work that we've done, all the pool work that we have to do. And so that was playing in the background. I had a playlist on Spotify going with music. Of course, we had people providing drinks, but I provided champagne. There was a dance hall, and there is a minister who I guess ran, I don't remember the actual name of what this thing was, but she did a Janus book. She provided a Janus book for everyone, and in it was like, write 3 things that you want to leave behind in 2022, write 3 things you want to carry forward in 2022, and write 3 things you want the community to do in 2023. And Janus is a god of time. You might know this. That has 2-headed figure. It's forward and back. You can look it up. I feel bad because we did this whole thing and like,
what's the name?
Janus.
I've been hearing Janus, like Janice, like
no, it's Janus.
Oh, like Jane. Okay, yeah. No, I've seen the name before, but I've
god of duality, Roman religion and myth. Janus. Oh, maybe it's Janus.
Oh,
Janus, the god of beginnings, gates, transitions, time, duality, doorways, passages, frames, and endings. So we had like a small, and the kids were involved in this little discussion. So the kids were like raising their hands and chiming in. And with it, we had a burning bowl ceremony where we took the things that we wanted to leave behind in 2022, wrote them down, and we burned them in a little like outside stove fire thing. So all of that happened. And then we, of course, went to dancing and revelry, and we had like we did a kids cheer. It was awesome. We had sparkling cider, which I went and got, and we lined up all the kids around 9:00, and we did a little countdown for them, and we like gave them all the cider, and we all cheered Happy New Year, and all the kids were super excited. They got to do it. Then they got to go be whisked off home to their beds, and then like 5 to 10 adults like stayed up till midnight, and we had the New York City Times Square like ball dropping thing on TV, and we played card games and just waited until midnight, and then the ball dropped, and we cheered Happy New Year and went on. It was great. We had a blast. It was a super, super fun. Best New Year's Eve party I think I've ever had.
Sorry, I had heard most of this through your conversation on Slack, so I was tuning out a little bit right now, mostly because I was reading about Janus.
Yeah, Janus, yeah.
Now, I'm pretty sure I had heard of the cult of Janus before, which was an actual cult. I mean, back then, cult, they just didn't have, like, this is pre like Christian churches and stuff like that. So like everything had a cult. There was a cult of Jupiter and a cult of right. But the interesting thing is seems like one of the few deities that wasn't just ripped off of the Greeks. Like he doesn't have a Greek equivalent.
Oh, interesting.
Like he has. Yeah, he looks like he comes from the Etruscans, which would have been the pre-Romans that lived on that part of Italy before the Roman Empire proper.
Yeah.
So it looks like I mean the Romans just pretty much borrowed or stole their entire thing, but so that's interesting.
Janus is objectively mythology. No one's worshiping Janus.
No, of course, here. It was a metaphor. Your person who did this is probably just like super into that kind of thing and was no one I don't think that you're part of the cult of Janus.
Okay.
Although I have accused you real quick. I have accused you of being in a cult before.
Right. Like no, not
that didn't even come to my mind. That's so funny. Yeah. All right. Let's see. What was my favorite thing? I got 2 weeks. Oh, you know what my favorite thing was? Christmas itself was a wonderful surprise because our plans were canceled. Like 2 days before Christmas, we were supposed to go to my wife's father's house, and then my brother and sister-in-law and their daughter were supposed to be there as well. And that would have been fun. And we ended up going this past weekend, and it was fun to be there and see their new house. But I'll tell you, I was a little stressed because like we were supposed to be. They have like an Airbnb. They've like made part of their house an Airbnb, so they took like a 3-bedroom. So it's like 3 bedrooms total. So we would have had to have like we would have either had to have been in our bedroom with the kids, or we would have had to like sleep on like a futon pull-out couch, and the kids sleeping in the room with the 2 nice beds. But just because they would have had a door that we could have closed and shut while they slept. So like I was already like, okay, neither option is great at all. So this kind of suck. And then of course being in a small, for Christmas in a relatively small space with another family, with essentially two other families, is like, a little stressful. But at the last minute, Gavin got a cough, and my brother and sister-in-law are like super sensitive about sickness, and in particular, even more so this week, because my sister-in-law Brianna had she has like a heart thing that she was getting. She had an appointment for, but this doctor was like booked solid, so she had to cancel it. They said that you cannot be sick to go to this like assessment, and so she was like, I don't want to get this pushed back another month or so. So we were just like, we were exercising extreme caution, but in this case it was like, oh, you don't want us there because you don't want to get sick. Hey, guess what? We'll bow out. You guys go have fun. And so we just postponed till after. Well, what we did was we just went, they went Christmas and we went New Year's, and it was so much more. Both things were so much more enjoyable. It was more enjoyable to be at my father-in-law's house with just our family without having to like do that. And then Christmas itself was wonderful because we just woke up. It was just the four of us.
Isn't that the best?
Some presents.
Isn't that amazing?
I made chocolate chip pancakes. We made cookies later that day. We just watched movies and hung out the whole day. It was so nice. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that this is the one. And he wasn't even sick. That was the best part. He didn't really ever get sick. He had just a cough. So it's not like it wasn't like at the cost of misery. It was great. So yeah, that was fun. So otherwise, it's been a pretty like, everyone's always busy around the holidays. And like, I want to hang out with people because I'm an extrovert. But everybody's got plans with like family or travel. And so the holidays are always a weird time for me where I'm like, if I don't have plans like booked far in advance, then I get like really lonely over the holiday week, because I usually have time off of work, or if I'm working, it's really slow. And then, but like no one's available to do stuff with that time off. And it's like, agony. So I definitely was experiencing that this week. But yeah, Christmas itself was a blast. So
sweet.
All right. Well, we're going to kind of skip DLC because, sorry, I know that we've like skipped a bunch, and I wish I had like one big final DLC, but like I said, we'll do fun DLC TikToks over the next several months. So like, get over it, listener. You'll have more DLC. You'll have DLC again before you have 80-bit pod smashing.
That's true.
So, let's just jump into our topic then. And we are, so we'll so later. And then in the meantime, we'll talk about our main topic tonight, which is 2022 in review, the podcast edition, for our own selves, for our own growth, for our own show. And then we'll also kind of, again, review a little bit over the last 5 years. If you can like pull up some last minute metrics and stuff, if you want to do that. I'm sure you've already done that or been doing that.
It's on the show notes.
Boom. And then like I said, we'll sort of discuss kind of a post-mortem, if you will, of 80-bit Podsmash if we have time. So let's jump. How was then let's do 2022 in review first. What was your favorite thing of the year?
I've got
game. It could be a game. It could be a 80-bit thing, or it could be anything else.
Well, of course, they're 80-bit things. So 2 80-bit things that I want to talk about that were awesome, but also like an asterisk of something else that's not 80-bit related, but kind of is. So the 80-bit ones are the Game Awards 2022 live watch along was amazing.
That was awesome. That's
on
mine
Twitch.
Too. That was great.
It was such a good show, and we never lulled in our like commentary. There wasn't like a gap. I guess that's more of a kudos to Jeff Keighley for putting on a really awesome show. But like sometimes it gets a little awkward, and we're like stumbling about what to talk about because we're not interested in the Game Awards anymore. But anyway, it was really, really good. That's why. And the other thing I really liked was the early 2022 review live streams. We had an idea where we were going to like maybe review a game in depth and do like a duel, both of us playing at the same time, live streaming. And we had set up all the technology to do it. And we did do it for Elden Ring and for Horizon Forbidden West. And that was really fun. I loved the tech to be able to switch between my gameplay, Penguin's gameplay, while we talked about like how we felt about the game, in-depth review.
That was
about
awesome.
everything.
And then this year just ended up sucking the rest of the year as far as games.
It wasn't a lot of like
we
new
had
thing.
Nothing to do. That was the one flaw. But when we can see, you have to remember, and listener, I understand the context of why that fell apart. I think it's helpful as sort of a post-mortem exercise. The only reason that didn't work was because we did it this year. If we had done it last year or any of the years before, we would have been fine. There were easily 12 games each year that we could have done once a month. Easily most years. This year this year was supposed to be that year too, right?
Yep.
We had so many last minute, so to speak, cancellations or postponements of games. But like, if all the games that were supposed to come out in 2022 as of January 2022, right? Like, if you were to look at the list of games in January 2022 that had release dates in 2022 that then later got delayed, we would have easily been able to do at least once a month with maybe a couple of holdover months, right, where we did something else. But so that I mean, literally, I think both of us had the motivation and the bandwidth to do that content, but we didn't have the games. There was nothing to play for like 4 months. We were just like, screw it, it's not. By the time we had something to play, would have been God of War or whatever, or Bayonetta even, we had long since just been like, this is not happening. So good times. But
yeah,
no, I
looking
agree.
at the list of
those two,
completed
both
games,
of those two things were very fun. In fact, the one that stands out to me the most was the Elden Ring one. That one was very fun to play together and live stream and figure out the tech for. That was great.
Yeah, we could have done like a lot of smaller titles that came out later in the year, but there wasn't those big like hits to keep us going. So like, I'm looking at my list of completed video games the whole year, and none of them were like on that level of Horizon, except for God of War, I guess, was the most recent one. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
And then the last like shout out favorite thing for this whole year was when you and I went to Richmond to see Colin Moriarty in Last Stand Media,
that was also good.
and Dustin and Chris, the three of them live at the National in Richmond. It was awesome. It was a super good time. Jack Brown's Burgers and Beers. It was great.
That was fun.
Woke up with a little headache the next day, a little tired. Because, So that's what about you?
I mean, those two, all three of those were probably as far as like podcast stuff goes. I'd say also, I mean, favorite things of the year in general for me would have been like, I mean, Elden Ring. It's crazy. That game dominated this year, and it was so predictable, while at the same time it became more and more inevitable with each cancellation. And again, the only game I saw rivaling it the whole year was God of War. And quite frankly, I would not have been surprised if God of War had one game of the year as well, right? Like, it was good enough to compete. But there shouldn't be just one competitor, right? There shouldn't be this year. It just speaks to the volume of this year that there was not a single like the best they could come up with for 6 nominees for game of the year were like is like God of War and Elden Ring, and then like Stray, which again I want to play. It sounds amazing. Xenoblade sounds amazing. Plague Tale sounds amazing, but they're just not Elden Ring. It was all in all a fascinating year of things. I've also obviously very much enjoyed getting into D&D and tabletops in general. We had an episode on tabletops because we recognize the influence that tabletops have had on gaming. And so whatever we do in our future content, whatever the next season looks like, I want to take the experiences I've had being a DM for D&D and be able to, and hopefully by then even maybe have tried out another TTRPG system, work somehow that into whatever we're talking about, because I really, it is so influential, right? It is gaming without the only difference between the main difference between D&D and any video game RPG is the lack of a game engine, right? The DM is the game engine. A thinking person is the game engine, which comes with advantages and disadvantages, but
and the player's handbook.
It's not better or worse. It's just, the DM is, but the player's handbook serves as sort of a this is the default rule set, and then the DM decides whether or not he wants to make it easy or hard. Like, he's still the engine, right? Like, your DM then becomes the setting of easy mode or hard mode, because he's it's literally the difference is just a thinking arbiter, right? And the fact that it's rendered in your imagination and not in a game engine. Now, there are virtual tabletops and stuff that help, but nevertheless, I'm getting off track. The bottom line is, I think that I've found and discovered just how influential, and I found that also my video game experience, it's like it's a circle, right? It's circular. My video game experience makes me want to change things to more accurately, like, take from the lessons I've learned from video game design. Like, I want to apply certain aspects of video game design to my D&D games because
I
find there are things that video games do better, even better than D&D, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, because again, that's also made by a specific set of designers, and those guys are flawed, and their reasoning for things are also flawed sometimes. Yeah, it's just it's great. It's great. That's why I think that this year has been interesting for me. So I'm hoping it fuels future content, and that people don't feel like it's like, oh, he got into D&D and he doesn't want to do the podcast anymore. No, I want to do the podcast. I want to play video games still. I just also have enjoyed this new aspect of gaming. So
yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's talk about the show. How do we do? How do we do this year? What are our top 5 shows for 2022?
Top 5 shows. So I learned something about podcast metrics and looking at these stats that I pulled. So there's a thing called an IAB. I'm like, what was that? Because there was 2 different numbers. There was like number of downloads and then IAB number of downloads. And they're vastly different, as I'll give both lists. So, but I want to describe what IAB is, because it's quick. IAB is an acronym for Interactive Advertising Bureau. It's an organization that Libsyn, our host content site that we've been using, actually contributes to. So an organization that has developed a series of industry standards to define what actually counts as a download. So in addition to filters being used, there's IAB certified metrics that apply things such as IP address blacklists, user agent blacklists, and ensures that at least 1 minute of playable content is downloaded, which is interesting. I've always wondered about that, like bots. And like you subscribe on your phone, it like downloads the episode, but you never listen to it. So does that actually count? Kind of stuff. So IAB is way more strict. So I'm going to start with the more strict numbers, and then we'll go to the more loosey ones. So our top 5 episodes that went live in 2022 under the IAB constraints.
Did that show up before, or is that? Oh yeah, look at that. Sorry, it was like, do we have that available to us? Is that new, or did they?
I think it's new with 5, Libsyn 5.
Okay, because I want to see what our IAB is for all time. I'm assuming you've pulled that up, right?
Well, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, I just did this year. I didn't look at all time.
Cool.
Like total numbers.
Because I really want to know IAB of all time, because that changes so much.
Well, you can try to find it while I talk, unless you want to hear what I...
Okay. No.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Top 5.
IAB, what's our...
Speaking of D&D and fantasy games, nope, that's not the right list. Here we go. IAB. Not speaking of D&D. The number 1 episode from this year is the LGBTQ gaming community episode, where we had friend of the show, Chris, as a guest.
Yeah, good.
His episode topped our charts at 40 IAB downloads. So,
nice.
Bonus level, Pokemon Legends Arceus review live stream was our second. It's actually a tie for second place. And that other tie was the non-gamer series part 2, teaching and learning games. Both of those came out in June, back to back, and they each got 35 downloads. So, fourth, When Indies Are No Longer Indies, which is our relatively new episode. It came out after Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Nice.
Yep. So that was at 14. And then Happy Thanksgiving, Press F for Feelings, Gratitude. Also, of course, Thanksgiving. And that was 12.
Cute. Nice.
So 40, 35, 14, and 12 were the download numbers for that. Our top 5 episodes of just raw downloads. So I guess letting the constraints go is D&D, fantasy games, and the Legacy of Tabletop Games. Came out in March at 91 downloads.
Yeah, we did that kind of sort of as a episode in honor of
Tiny Tina's Wildlands?
Wonderlands.
That's it, yeah. Thank you. I said Wildlands. Second place is Developer Profile from Software. No surprise there, back in February. Of course, anything from Software is going to get some attention. Valentine's Day, Video Game Love Stories hit the charts at third place. There was a tie for third. And this is hilarious. The tie, or third place, was the bonus level Elden Ring review live stream, which is the audio portion of our live stream. So it was a content created specifically for Twitch.
That was the same with our Pokemon Arceus one for IAB.
Both you're cases. Right. Yep. So wild that those topped our charts, that they're like not even podcasts. So people were listening and jiving with that. However, Libsyn tracks... Yeah, maybe it was the YouTube feed, because Libsyn does push things to YouTube. I don't know if there's metrics that are shared, but I have no idea. So, and then in 5th place, Morally Gray Game Developers, where we kind of took high profile game developers or people names you might recognize, and talked about some of their morally gray capitalist decisions. That was in 5th place. Episode came out in March at 80 downloads. So first place was 91, 86, 81, and 80 were the download numbers for that. So yeah, what do you think?
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are very different. I'm like, I actually pulled up the explanation myself because I really want to understand the difference. It's fascinating to me, number one, that there's not, it's so easy to manipulate those metrics, and that we haven't really always had the accurate data, or we've been operating off the accurate data. So that's interesting to me, right? Like I'm totally for a stricter version, right? I don't want to just have like the single click, or like we've always speculated the idea of like, oh, just because people subscribe to the show and like does the RSS feed just register? That's what would sort of account for all those spikes. We that's what we always assumed accounted for all the spikes. So yeah, like who actually listened? That's what we care about, right? And that sounds like IAB is a bit more of that. So, I'm I have it pulled up here, the kind of the top 5 IAB episodes of all time. We'll get to that in a second. So just looking then at the IAB downloads, I mean, we're talking 3 episodes in June and 2 episodes in November versus episodes completely like way earlier than that, right? Beginning of the year, February and March, right? That's just that's so different, right? And there's no way to be like to reconcile those two things. Nevertheless, there's information I think that can be gleaned from either one. All the episodes in our unique downloads, except for the video game love story one, they all have something to do with like stuff that was going on, like obviously there's a reason I got into D&D this year, right? Is because D&D just blew up this year, right? Like it blew up in during the pandemic, but like also Vox Machina, the Critical Roles, like the Critical Role thing dropping on Amazon, that was huge. That was a huge influx. And then Stranger Things, like D&D was super popular this year, so that doesn't surprise me that episode, like it's all we're talking like unique downloads are probably more easily susceptible to things like quick, like trend things, like this came across someone's algorithm and it auto played on YouTube, right? Yeah, or whatever, right? And then they
like social engine, SOE, right? Search engine optimization. So like, what are people searching for? What are people reading? You're right. It's the algorithms. It's the Facebooks and YouTubes, Twitters. Hitting
and
people.
So then From Software, obviously 2 Elden Ring related things, and then like morally gray game developers. Like the last several years have just been like more developers doing shady things, right? And so, and not to mention, just like this is before the Xbox Sony controversy, right? Before it really got nasty this year, right? Like before, I mean, I think we had done this episode when that had been announced, but it hadn't really gotten nasty yet. Sony hadn't started like actively trying to block them. That like all happened this summer. And then things got ugly, right? Or things have continued to get ugly. So like we didn't even have that to talk about then, and yet I imagine it's still been something that's been searched and looked up and all that.
Well, yeah, with the Activision acquisition and Bobby Kotick, of course.
So that's what I meant. Yep. Yeah. Well, and that's what we were leaning into. I think mostly was the Bobby Kotick stuff at that point.
Yep.
But now there's so much more to talk about that we have talked about, right? With Sony being kind of shady, and also Microsoft being kind of shady, and it all being just this whole shady thing that's going down and questionable, at the very least questionable and morally gray.
Yep.
So cool. But then when you look at the actual IAB numbers, it tells a whole different story, right? We've got the non-gamer series showed up on there, which that makes me super happy that people actually spent time presumably listening to that. And then and specifically the idea of teaching games, right? That means that people were interested in how do I teach. That's super important, because I would love to lean into that as a show. That's number 3, right? The Pokemon one, if you were to take these numbers at face value, that tells me that people wanted to actually watch the Pokemon one, but didn't want to necessarily watch the Elden Ring one. So like that says something.
Well, Pokemon, it's extraordinarily more popular, so that makes sense. Yeah,
I could see the LGBT one getting a boost from our friend, right? Like he probably told some of his friends about it, but still, it's pretty cool that one stands on its own. That was a big
I'm very proud that's
kind of a big swing.
Number 1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Love that.
And then the indie question too. That's pretty cool, showing up on there. But those are much lower. Those first 3 ones are like a lot higher than the others, so that's interesting. So,
Yep.
Cool. Well, then let's continue to just talk about this year real quick, and then we'll talk more about our sort of a retroactive postmortem on this season of the show next. So, how has the podcast grown or changed in 2022? What goals did 80-Bit accomplish this year?
Wow, this was I only answered with stats. I just put some stats up here.
Stats.
Comparing this year to like some of the previous years, I was still new to the IAB thing and didn't go down that rabbit hole. But as far as like unique downloads, this whole year we had 6,181 for 2022. The pandemic year, which was kind of our best year, was at 6,548. So we're only 400 at the time I pulled these numbers. We were only 400 downloads below 2020.
Nice, yeah, and I would imagine there's probably even if it's not an exact metric, it's probably like close the amount of IAB versus unique when it's
And interestingly enough, we dipped a lot. I guess from 6,500 down to 5,700 in 2021. So I knew 2021 was rough for us, like numbers wise. Like we still created the content, but I saw like not a lot of hits. But then we came back in 2022. So I was like, all right, we're still here. We're still kicking. Like things are still rolling. And so all of that to answer what has changed or grown in 2022. I don't think we changed a whole lot between 2020
we took some swings. You know, we dropped the news show, which was tough. We didn't want to do that, but we did.
The news show. We got rid of the news show. Yeah.
The news.
It sounded like you said we dropped a new show. And I was like, no, we didn't drop a new show.
Well, it was a show, right? But yes, we dropped the news show. We dropped the streams. The streams were kind of an attempt to somewhat replace that content, but a little different. So that was a little, having to drop content is never fun because you want to provide it and you want to get better at it, right? But the podcast has always been the bread and butter of our show, has always been the meat. So being able to keep that up and know when to drop side projects to protect that is important because it would be very easy. I think that's an important lesson, of course, as we look at season 2 of the show is we never had numbers on Twitch like we have on the podcast. Even with the more strict IAB, we've never had 40 listeners watch the show all at once, or watch any of our Twitch shows versus 40 people who will listen to our shows. So that to me is like the podcast is still kind of figuring out a way to protect that and keep that as like our primary thing is really important. So obviously we want to do more with Twitch. We think it's a fascinating platform. Obviously we want to do more with some of the other content and stuff like that. But I think it was a good year for us to kind of continue to swing big, but be okay if we miss, right? Like be okay if we miss a couple, or be okay if we to continue with the baseball metaphor if we hit a foul ball, or bunt it, right? Like okay, all right. So that I think was a good way we changed. I think it was also great that we connected with the flock, right? Like we connected with the flock early last year, and being able to like just have those guys as another group that we've had. We can talk with that. We talk with them on the side still and plan things to do with those guys. And so having that as sort of just another group of people like that's, it's more been in the background stuff, but another group of people in Richmond doing a podcast that makes us feel less alone. And I think that's great. So that's been a good thing for us, I think. So cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know what goals did we accomplish this year. We didn't really have
what
any
goals we had.
Well, the goal, I guess the one goal we had was to kick off that review live show, and to your point about like how we've grown, we actually grow. It was a growing moment for us to not continue the review live stream show when there wasn't any games that were new, relevant, that we were going to pick up and be excited about at release. Both of us. Like I was excited about Gran Turismo 7, but you're not going to go spend $70 on a game just so you can play it.
There were years that we would have had that, and this was not the year, but it looked like it was going to be the year. It wasn't the year.
Yeah. We were supposed to have Final Fantasy 16, Hogwarts Legacy, Gollum, Suicide Squad, made by Rocksteady, the makers of Batman. We were supposed to have
what else was supposed to be? There was
Starfield. If I don't know if you would have gotten that on
Starfield,
PC, but
I might have, right? Like, Starfield.
In addition to what we did yet, So
Zelda Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom was supposed to come out this year and it didn't. Yeah, it's crazy. There was a point in January, I remember, or December. I remember it was cold. I was either walking the dogs or walking the kids or both. And I remember texting you about it and like, oh my gosh, this is a year that was supposed to be game of the year was supposed to be between Breath of the Wild 2 at the time. We didn't know the title. So Breath of the Wild 2, like a Zelda game, God of War, and a From Software game all in 1 year.
Horizon.
These are 3 previous winners, and Horizon. But I knew Horizon never really had a shot.
But funnily enough, it was supposed to be Horizon and Zelda again, just like it was in 2017.
That's right. Yeah, and ended up being Horizon and the From Software version of that Zelda game, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yep. So disappointing. Horizon needs the win. They need a year to come out where they just get to shine on their own. Hopefully, the last game, third game. Third time's a charm. They'll get to come out and stand on their own.
Yeah.
But they're not going to keep competing with when games come out that are of the caliber that have been coming out the last couple of years. Like the winners are all complete innovators, right? Not iterations. And Horizon was innovative when it first came out, but it was an innovative game up against a more innovative game, which was Breath of the Wild. So like if they really want, they're gonna have to push innovation. I think that's the lesson here. From 2022 solidified the trend for me is innovative games that change up, switch things up. If it's an existing developer or an existing franchise. It's got to be a big change, a big, bold, new direction that worked. And how many times? Like, that's like lightning in a bottle. How many times are you ever going to get moments like that in the gaming industry?
Well, the entire gaming industry's opportunity is ripe because Armored Core 6 is probably not going to be something to compete with like Elden Ring was.
Who knows? You're probably right. I don't know. I don't know enough about Armored Core as a franchise, and I don't know enough about Armored Core 6 about what it's going to be, right? Because they've never had it directed by Miyazaki before, but also Miyazaki got his start working on it. So it's not like he hates the franchise, rolls his eyes, and is like, okay, fine, we'll do Armored Core. It's like, no, he loves Armored Core just as much as the players do, more than likely, but he's going to have his own take on it too, because he's himself. He's Miyazaki, so we'll see. But you're right. The chances are Armored Core might not be, their creme de la creme of games. So now's the time. I mean, anytime between From Software years, we'll see. We'll see what they do next. I mean, I'm interested to see if they do like a new game, or if they revisit one of their old franchises, right? Because people want Elden Ring 2, people want Bloodborne 2. Everything they've done pretty much since Dark Souls 3 has been brand new. And so Armored Core will be the first revisiting of a franchise they've done since Dark Souls 3. So, like, people want them to revisit their existing franchises. Publishers want them to revisit their existing franchises, but they always seem to be like, new thing. Oh, and by the way, it's Game of the Year.
Yeah, right?
So, yeah. Like, oh, man, crazy. All right, anyways, that's how did we get on that trend? We're talking about 2022. It was but yeah, that all just goes to show, I think that the whole trend, that whole topic, like sidebar we just had, was all to say, like, January 2022 for us looks so different than January 2023 does.
Yes.
Not just because we're obviously taking a break from the show, but like our expectations of what the year would turn out to be. And this year did not meet those expectations. Despite the fact that Elden Ring surpassed those expectations, doesn't mean that the rest of the year, it was the only one, right? It was still the only one. And it's a weird year where it's like there were bright spots, but so much of this year was just gray.
Well, 2023 is going to be nuts. It's going to be lit.
Maybe it will, maybe it won't, right? Like, I don't take it for granted anymore just because of how my expectations of this past year were versus the reality. So who knows?
The things that
it probably will be
that I'm excited about this year were the things that were delayed from last year. So I'm pretty hopeful that this year's going to be lit, just because we know everything was like shown off, but we'll see.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of the games that got delayed were already question marks for me, right? Like Forspoken could have gone either way.
Oh, I know.
And only now that they had a demo, now I'm for sure I don't want to get it, right? But it could have gone either way. And if you had asked me back in this time last year, I would have said it could have gone either way. And I still feel the same about Hogwarts, right? I don't think Hogwarts is a slam dunk. There's enough like stink around that franchise for me, thanks to the internet, that like who knows how it'll be received, and I will judge it based on the merits of it as a game, not as a franchise, right? But it could still go either way for me, right? Like
I'm waiting for reviews. I ain't pre-ordering it.
Yeah. I don't see that as a shoe-in.
Yep.
And there's a lot of games this year that are like that for me, where I'm the only one that I think for sure is a 100% guarantee for me is Breath of the Wild. Sorry, Tears of the Kingdom. It's gonna be hard for me to break that habit. I am. I hate to say this because I hate that this is true about myself, but like there has so far been enough gap in controversy for me with Activision Blizzard that I'm entertaining the notion of possibly doing Diablo 4.
Yeah,
and everything seems to indicate that it's going to be a great entry in the franchise. So
yeah, looks great. I want to play
it. I want to play it, right? And I want it to be good because I want Blizzard to do things that are good again. But I also am just so anti-Blizzard right now that like it's still hard for me to get past. So nevertheless, like that one is also a normally in any other year it would be a slam dunk for me, but now we'll see. So yeah, there's still a lot this year that are question marks, but I'm hopeful. I am definitely hopeful. So cool. Well then, yeah, our hopes for 2023 is that we come back and we come back with content that's great. So thank you again. Of course, thank you listeners for like indulging us a break. I know that you don't have a say in the matter, but like hopefully you'll come back and want to do it. So thank you, of course, obviously Termite for being down with it, because I was, for full disclosure, and I think that anybody who's listened to us long enough to know us probably knows this was inevitable that I would approach you about it. But yeah, I was the one who was kind of my idea first, and you were cool with it. So hopefully this will be a good time for kind of refreshing a sabbatical, so to speak, as intended. But yeah, hopefully we come back with great content. Do we have time? How long have we been recording? I do want to do a postmortem on season 1 though. So, oh yeah, we have time. So season 1, season 1 of the show is ending, and this format will change, right? 277 episodes, actual episodes, not to mention
our bonus levels.
The bonus the bonus stuff, the bonus stuff, and the reviews of all the live stream stuff that we did, and we've changed so much the way we've done that over the years. But like, show and review real quick. Let's look. I pulled the numbers for the IAB numbers for most listened to of all time. But did you have our most listened to of all time handy from the other?
I don't.
Okay, that's fine. I think I can just hit the toggle and find out. So let's talk about IAB first. So the strict version. This makes me happy. The top episode IAB total of all time was our Reclaim Arcade interview.
Oh, nice.
So again, that speaks to me that like our episodes where we have guests, especially like interesting things like that, are gonna result in more listens because those people are gonna.
Yeah. What's the number? How many downloads?
Share the show. 81, which is great because that surpasses even our like unique downloads from this year. It comes close, right? Like it would be if this were being judged by unique downloads, that would have made the list, right? That would have knocked out more like Array game developers. So that's cool. Episode, the next one was from 2019. The next two are from 2019, but the reboots, remasters, and remakes discussion where we kind of hashed out what are the differences, what do we think the differences between those things are, right? Because the term remake has changed so much since people started using it, and now it's so much more nuanced.
That was 2019.
That's also one that was good. Yep, that was July 14th,
Resident Evil 2 remake was probably around.
Probably
that was probably
and then we probably knew about like I guess that would have been before the Final Fantasy VII remake. That pre-pandemic and everything too. That's crazy to think about. So also from 2019, boycott Blizzard ?
Yeah, all right.
That's not surprising. Those are so those are 75 and 72 downloads respectively. Our episode on localization comes in number 4th, so that was from June 2020. And then finally, our 5th episode, the cheats, hacks, and exploits episode from 2019. So that's cool that we recently revisited that one. And that was with 70 downloads. Oh, and that was tied actually for our Soul in the Console on Sega Dreamcast. So I didn't notice that. So
nice.
two spots take the number 5 spot. So so contrasting that with our IAB, our unique downloads, it's loading. Video Game Engine still has the top spot, 248. So I don't know what accounts for that. I don't know if that episode is popular or not. but it's got a ton of unique downloads. Mortal Kombat number 2, I think that hasn't changed. Localization, look at that, number 3 in both spots, or at least on the top 5 in both spots is our episode on localization with 156.
Nice.
Our craft beer round 2 with guest
Oh,
star
those are
Kevin.
so fun. Yes.
Yeah, it was number 4 there, and then games as a service state of the industry that was number 5. So I feel like that hasn't changed since last time we looked at it.
Man,
so,
that's like a solid Termite excitement list right there. All that.
right? Yeah. So anyways, those are our episodes as a total. I think that, I mean, the show, we've learned a lot, I think, over the last 5 years. Like, if I were to do a sort of a full kind of like a lot of the positive changes I think we've made, aside from trying things and realizing that we couldn't make them happen long term. I think that like we've made a lot of we've made small changes that I think are great. Like 80-bit Podsmash is our favorite thing, as opposed to doing this podcast. We did that for so long. Most of the show is that, actually.
Yeah.
I think that's just like a smart little tiny change. But also we added those things, right? Like DLC was in the get-go, but like favorite things, we also realized we wanted to add that. And I think we do and choose our interviews a lot better now. And also, gosh, the technology using Zencaster, that was a huge thing, right? And then when the pandemic hit, that just became that's the norm. And it's just like, oh, amazing. So just great changes in the way that in our ability, the fact that we, I think, seamlessly transitioned to pandemic and your move, like, no problem. It wasn't something that was like a big, oh my gosh, this is gonna be life changing. No, it just was like, okay, fine, we're doing this remote now, and now it's normal to do it remote. Yeah, all that I think have been great, like ways in which both big and small the podcast has changed for the better. Yeah, we've changed a lot in like how we structure the episodes too, right? I feel like our structures early on, we used to focus so much more on research, and that was good. That was great starting out. Like, we wanted to back up what we're saying, but we then learned that I think we do better with our episodes where we're talking more off the cuff based on our experiences. And we'll do research where it's important, but I think we even now just pick and choose our topics based more on like, what do we have to say about this that we can back up with our experience and don't have to necessarily back up with fact. I think that has been, that's been another sort of subtle change over the years. So any other thoughts as to how the show has changed?
My initial push for like research was to make sure that everything we said was correct, and like it's kind of like how you would run a news show, almost like a journalist.
Just you,
us.
To me, I was, in my mind, it was like a stuff you should know thing, where those guys are always talking about the research they're doing,
right?
But it became not that, and I think that's been a positive change. Sorry, go on.
No, you're good. So that was more like the motivation to do that. I forgot that we even pushed research heavy initially, but I was going to say, like, your knowledge of the gaming industry has increased like exponentially, and I think
that's true.
Early on, with that extra research we were pushing, helped you get a lot of facts put into your brain to like contextualize everything else later on. So like, as the podcast evolved over 5 years, you were more ready or at the ready to talk off the cuff from experience and like make insightful discussions and opinions because of that past experience. That was really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
But I'm glad that you brought up the beer pairing episodes. Those were so much fun. What better way where gaming goes to grab a beer than to pair a craft beer with a video game? And like, of course it's absurd. Of course it's ridiculous.
It was always, those were just fun side episodes. And at some point we'll have to launch, when we relaunch, we're going to have to do that again. And that probably will mean I will have to come visit. So, which you've been dying for anyways.
Yeah. And I would love to do something like that in person, like, and do it live over Twitch with the microphones hooked up so we can do the audio thing and spin it off with minimal effort. But I loved that. You know, we always stayed family friendly. We always wanted to make sure we could be playable with any audience from the beginning. We might change that though, because was that actually a boost to our numbers or not? We don't have enough numbers to really like know the difference. No one's really offended by family friendly, but I feel like it's more real if you're not, especially when there's a lot of adult things happening in the gaming industry.
I know.
And
I'm funnier when I'm not having to.
Yeah.
I definitely I learned this from improv, right? When I would do improv comedy, we would perform in a lot of ways for, we kind of targeted sort of families where there was the college group, the on-campus group. They did all the they didn't have to worry about family friendly, right? Because they had the college students, right? So they were always the draw of like, they were the dark ones. And we were the ones that were like, hey, no, bring your family because we're a community group, right?
Yeah.
So I learned how to be funny, so to speak, without having to resort to just like blue collar humor. But I know myself when I can do blue collar humor. Oh boy, blue collar. That's not the right word. That sounds condescending. More of the whatever, dark humor, whatever you want to call it. When I can just not care, right? Like stuff that you can say not in front of kids. But that's not. I don't care if like we do come back and we're family friendly. Like that's fine because I like I said, I can work with it. I can still work with it, right? Humor doesn't have to just be cussing and like dirty jokes to be funny, right? Like
Yep.
it always stretches me to work within constraints. But it can be fun to take the restraints off and do that. But like, I mean, I can say that most of our listeners that we engage with, which probably is the single most important metric for content creators, most of those guys are like they're either single dudes or they're young dads as well that like probably don't listen to us in front of their kids, right? So like, yeah, they would be fine with us being not family friendly. They probably don't listen to us in front of their kids anyways, right? So it's like, okay, great, then let's just like cut it. If it's fat, then let's trim it, right? So
But yeah. Go on. And one thing that still rings true, I think even more so now, 5 years later, was one of the motivations for starting the show to begin with was kind of the legitimacy of video games as an art form and how it is a part of mainstream culture. And there was something that had gone on Twitter. We actually got a like from someone in the industry, which is always exciting, about the idea of books. You know, if you're a book, no one goes around and says, are you a reader or not? I guess some people do. But like, what is the gaming term that's the analogy to reader of someone who reads books? Or like, you watch movies, we read books, we play games, like we play video games. There's no like, and so we have to change the word gamer and its connotation to something that's like everyone is a gamer now. So it doesn't mean anything. It's like, and like, the legitimacy of pop culture references to video games and how it's all like cross in there as a storytelling medium, as an art form. And so it's gotten more prevalent in our society and our culture. But back just in the last 5 years, when we first started this podcast, video games were still like the underwear you'd buy your kids at the store, which was a huge step up from when we were a kid. Like you would never see Nintendo at Walmart, like other than like in the video game section, which was then the electronics section, right? So like the evolution of the cultural acceptance of video games in general has changed in the last 5 years, and it makes me feel happy and proud to have like this podcast as, we're actually taking video games seriously as an storytelling art form. Like that's what we're doing. We're taking these topics that we care about, like LGBTQ representation in character in the games. Like, what does that look like? And what does the community around that look like? Because people are doing that about movies and books for years. And we're just now doing this with video games. And so not a lot of people are doing that. Like, it's one thing to just churn out a new show and like do that. And I'm really excited about that. This was a platform for me. I'm transitioning to my second thought now. And my second thought was that I would always get into these video game discussions among peers that were just, I was clearly more knowledgeable and other folks were not. And it's fine. Like, I don't expect anyone else to do that, but it was kind of like unfulfilling for me at that point, because like they were just spitting nonsense opinions that you can find these nonsense opinions on Reddit and Twitter now. Like if you just go look, you'll find them. But that's what was around me, and that's fine. Like, okay, there was a few people that I could really have good conversations about video games with, but it wasn't enough. And I really wanted to get this out of me. Like I was so pent up about like, here's what's actually going on in the industry and no one else follows it like I do. So like, I want to talk about it. And not only do I follow the industry itself, but the people who also talk about the industry. So pontificators, journalists, etc. And so like this was my way of getting all that stuff out, in addition to my 30 years plus of experience playing video games. So it's been great. And I don't want it to go away. So I want to come back badly.
It's not going away, but it's going to come back and it's going to look different. So
yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that is the show. So normally we would say what's happening next week, but we're going to take a break. So enjoy, maybe take a dalliance over to the flock or listen to another favorite podcast. We will be back soon and hope that you're here when we're back. And hope that we provide you content that will be even more addictive than our current content. Exciting. But anyways, we, again, are still always eager to hear your thoughts on our show. This episode was all about our show. So we want to hear your thoughts on our show. So what do you think of the last year of content? What do you think of the last 5 years of content? What do you want to see us do more of in the future? Or is there a small vocal minority out there that just hates us and wants us to go away? If we want to hear from you, even if it's the last one, so that we can have someone to like prove wrong, right? Like then we can be the underdogs being like, you can't keep us down, and then we'll make an even better show because of your hatred. So please send us your hatred, but also send us your feedback. All feedback is constructive feedback, even if it's not intended to be. So please send it all our way, and Termite will once again share with you where you can reach us.
Add your name to the list of the literal naysayers when we started this podcast 5.5 years ago that said, oh, this thing, you're not going to do it more than a month. It'll be gone. So many people said that to me. Here we are. 5.5 years later, every single week, we've never missed a beat. So add your list to that name of naysayers and come talk some smack right now. You can still do that because all of our social media outlets are still live. We still track them. We will still respond there. They're not going anywhere, and you need to follow now because that's the most important time to do it so that whenever we do come back, we can push that publish button to our socials, and you will be made aware of what we're doing next. And you can find all of that information at 80bitpodsmash.com, 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website with links to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I was thinking of like social media platforms versus RSS feeds, so I had to pause.
Right.
Our Discord server, our TikTok, there's a link tree with everything. So find and follow us there, as well as our RSS feed. It will not change, so you'll find our next audio adventure over at Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, etc., all at 80bitpodsmash.com.
Yeah, and again, we don't have an episode coming up next week, but please stay tuned because we will probably have one-offs in between season one-offs between now and when we start, and then start paying attention as we get closer to Q2. Hopefully, we'll have some announcements as when we'll be launching and what it will look like. But we have loved all of you that have taken the time to listen to our show and given us feedback or engaged with us. So please don't stop. Please continue to talk to us. Head over to Discord in particular and join that server and talk to us and give us more thoughts. But yep, well, we will see you sometime this year.
Thank you, audience, for your 5.5 years of listening. Thank you so much tremendously. We would not be doing this if we had zero numbers. So we have numbers. Yep. Thank you. And we will see you later.
Season 2. See you season 2.